Hi everyone and welcome to my January wrap up. So I am not going to be doing this in the typical way that I've been doing it because throughout the month of January and hopefully continuously I have been doing weekly vlogs where I've discussed all of the books as and when I've been reading them. So I don't really want to repeat myself too much. I will give you a brief overview of how I found the books, and then I'm going to spend this wrap up really looking at the stats for my month and seeing how I've been doing overall. So I'm just going to get straight into that. Overall, this month I've read 12 books, which is really good for me because I've read quite a few big books. On average, I read about 10 to 12, and the fact that I have maintained that whilst reading larger books, like any book over 500 pages is a large book to me. And I've read quite a few that have hit over 500 pages. So I'm really proud of myself for that. I'm amazed by that. Overall, I had a total page count of 5,943 pages, which averages out to about 495 pages a book, which is actually really good. But I do know that I've read quite a lot of big books this month. So I'm happy with that. That is a lot of pages and I'm really happy. I've also managed to get 8 additional books off my TBR because I DNF'd the entire Gone series. I had read one and then I DNF'd 1, 2, 3, 5 others. So that's 5 books that were on my TBR that are now not. I also DNF'd my book club's buddy read, which was Into the Water by Paula Hawkins. And then I DNF'd This Will Be Funny Someday by Katie Henry. That was an arc I got from HarperCollins. Sadly, I just lost interest. There was nothing wrong with the book. I just wasn't feeling it when it came to me picking it back up. And I also felt the same with The Sanatorium by Sarah Pearce, which I was actually on a blog tour for. I wasn't feeling the book at the time, and I thought I'd rather just not read it than give it a bad review because I'm not in the mood. So I got all of those books off my TBR. I've put them down. They're probably not getting picked back up. It's okay. We're moving on. So in terms of the books I've read, I started out my month by reading Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare, which was book 2 in the Dark Artifices. I also continued and read Queen of Air and Darkness. Lord of Shadows, I gave a 5-star review. I loved how it all played out. I loved the characters. I loved the storylines. It ended on such a dramatic note as well. Like, it ended mid-action right after something really dramatic happened. We didn't get to see any fallout. We didn't get to see anything. It was horrible. And I didn't pick Queen of Air and Darkness up straight away, so it was so dramatic having to wait. And all I can say is I'm glad I didn't have to wait the year for the next one to be published. Moving on to Queen of Air and Darkness. I gave this one a 4.5 because I still thought the story was absolutely phenomenal. I thought the characters were amazing. I thought this was an absolutely amazing end to this trilogy. What I didn't like about it, which I'm sure you can probably guess, is the size. This book totaled in 880 pages, and that was unnecessary, to be honest. And I felt that really hindered my experience. I had to listen to an audiobook and read along with this one because I struggled to actually finish it myself because it was taking me so long. And whilst I was enjoying it, I'm the type of person that if I take a long time to read a book, I start resenting reading the book. I start not enjoying my read. So I was getting through this with the audiobook at a quicker pace. It still took me a long time, but I got through it at a quicker pace, and yeah, it was great. It was actually a really good story. The characters were great. It was the perfect ending that I could have hoped for this. And my issue was just the length, so I docked it down half a star just for that, because if you can handle big books, more power to you, amazing. You will have no problem with this. But I was just like, oh, I've read a lot of big books recently. I need to be done. I also continued on and read my buddy reads with Jade, which were 9th anniversary and 9th Judgment and 10th anniversary. I loved both of these. I gave 9th Judgment a 4-star and 10th anniversary a 4-star. I gave them both 4-star ratings. 9th Judgment was actually really interesting. I didn't expect it to get as dark as it got, and I was really intrigued as to what happened? Why was it so dark? And I wanted to know what was going on, and the stories merged together. I feel as though it was an excellent blend of the characters because they weren't all forced in there. The problems I was having with Lindsay, they kind of subsided a bit, and I really enjoyed that. Overall, it was a really positive experience. This book was not as dark. It was good. It started out a bit slow, then it got a bit quicker, and there was one storyline I didn't necessarily enjoy, but the other one I did. But both of these were excellent reads. I can't really talk about either of them because they are continuations in a series. Then, for a special video, I read 3 of Brooke's favourite books, one of them being Cersei. Now let me tell you a little bit about my feelings on Cersei. I gave this a 2.5 star rating. I felt as though I could really acknowledge the beauty that was this book. It was beautifully written. The story was beautiful. But I was bored all the way through. I had such high expectations. I am a person who loves mythology. So I knew the story of Cersei-ish. She wasn't really a main character in what I've read before. But I knew the story of Cersei and I found it very interesting to start off with. And then it was just fine. And it wasn't even fine because I didn't like it. It was one of them where I can see why people love it so much. It just didn't do anything for me. So sadly, that's how that one ended. But I then went on and read Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerry Maniscalco, and I really enjoyed this. I felt as though the first 50-ish pages were a bit slow, but then it picked up dramatically, and I really, really enjoyed it. Overall, I gave this a 4-star rating. I feel as though the ending was a little bit confusing for me. When I say a little bit confusing, I mean I had absolutely no idea how it ended. Finally, if you've seen the vlog, you will know what else I read. But I read House of Earth and Blood, which is the first book in Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. I did not expect to like this. I went into this thinking it's fantasy. I don't really like fantasy. It's going to be a bit much. I gave this a 4.5 star rating. I absolutely adored my read of this. I thought it was really good. The first 200 pages, I was struggling a little bit, but I was getting through it. Didn't really matter to me that much. I was enjoying it, but it was a tiny bit of a struggle because I thought there was such high fantasy elements. I didn't understand what was going on. However, it turns out that once I hit page 200, I was like, no, actually, I'm really enjoying this. I'm fine. I'm making my way through it. And this book is 800 pages long. And the first 200 pages, I came to realise, were actually quite info dumpy from people. It didn't feel that way when you was reading it. It didn't feel info dumpy. It felt as though, to me, there was just fantasy. I didn't understand the fantasy, so I thought that's why I was struggling. It was only when I got past it and actually read the rest of the book, I thought, oh, I'm not struggling anymore. Maybe it wasn't the fantasy problem. But I read this, absolutely loved it. My vlog that I did for Brooke is spoiler filled, so if you've read any of these books, Kingdom of the Wicked, Cersei or Crescent City, go and check that out. Because now I also had a physical book that I don't own anymore because I loved it so much. I want a finished copy and I got it as an ARC. So I sent my ARC off to Brooke, and that was the book Unchosen by Catherine Blair. I absolutely adored that book. That was a story that followed a dystopian, there's a virus going around that could infect people through eye contact, and there was a group of survivors, and it was about the sister of the chosen one pretending she was the chosen one to save her sister. So good, so interesting. I absolutely recommend it because it was amazing. Not perfection, there were a couple of issues, but amazing, and I gave it a 5 stars because I did not care about any of the issues. Finally, I also read an ebook, which was an ARC I got for Find You First by Linwood Barclay. I love Linwood Barclay. People know I love Linwood Barclay. I expect a lot from Linwood Barclay. Sadly, I felt very let down by Find You First. It's not what I expect anymore. Linwood Barclay has always been an author that gave me what I needed. He was so unique with all of his stories. He gave stories that were not unique a massive twist that made them so unique. Like, there was a perspective of, in some of his earlier books, he wrote stories from the perspective of a side character, and I love that thing. And with this book, I predicted everything that was going to happen. It got crazy at the end. I can't explain because spoilers, but it got ridiculous at the end. There was no entertainment with it at all. I was really... It felt like I had secondhand embarrassment because I was just like, I'm so upset reading this book. So I was really disappointed, sadly. And final 3 books I read, I picked up Life of Riley Beginner's Luck by Simon James Green. This is a short middle grade about a young boy who has bad luck. And it was really fun. It was really cute. It was what I needed because I'd been reading a lot of big, heavy books. I just needed something short and fun and easy. And this book really delivered. I loved it. I gave it a 4-star rating. It was a good time. It was a really good time. And if you like a middle grade, go ahead and pick this one up because it was a lot of fun. I also read The Invisible Life of Addy LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And I'm so glad I finally read this. I loved it. I gave it a 5-star rating. However, I will say I did attribute my 5-star to the audiobook. I read this and listened at the same time for all of the book, and I loved it. I loved every second. I cried, I laughed, I contemplated life. It was a really great time, but I will say that I think the main reason I gave it a higher rating is because of the audiobook. I might have taken a long time because it was quite emotionally demanding. It took me a long time to read. I think I got up to page 60 before I picked up the audiobook, and it took me like 2 days to get to page 60. And like I said earlier, if a book takes me a long time to read, I lose interest quite quickly. So I feel as though if I didn't have the audiobook, I wouldn't have enjoyed it that much. But because I had the audiobook, I absolutely adored it, and I cannot recommend this book enough. Now, the final book I read was Even If We Break by Marika Nijkamp. I had good expectations. Then I found out on Goodreads that it was very badly rated. Then I read it. I originally gave this book, and my stats will actually reflect it, sadly, because I've recently changed my mind. I recently gave this book a 3-star rating when I read it. And I felt as though it was bog standard thriller. There was nothing new to be added to the genre. It was exactly how you expect it to go. You could predict everything that happened because it was very obvious where it was going to go because it was that type of predictability. And I thought, well, maybe if you don't know anything about thrillers, this is something new and entertaining for you. That's why I gave it a 3-star, because I thought it has that potential for people that don't know the genre. And then I thought, I want to give a personal rating. I don't want to give a book based on how other people would enjoy it. I didn't really enjoy it. I had a lot of issues with it. There were no explanations as to how the perpetrator did what they did. We found out it was them, and then it just kind of left and moved on to the next bit. And I was like, I want details of what you did, because it sounds really interesting, and I want to know what... No, I kind of got a sense of why, but I want to know how. I want to know what exactly you did. How did this happen? How did this person die? How did this trap get set up? I want to know. Nothing was explained. It was also made clear that it was set up in a particular way, in a specific order, but there was never any explanation as to why that order was the order. Basically, this book did nothing, and I was really upset with it. I had to contemplate how I was feeling for a while first, but in the end, I decided to give this book a 1.5, and that's probably the best I could give it. I don't wish it hadn't been written, because I did. I just wish it had been written better, and I was originally thinking, oh, there are many people that can enjoy this. And then I thought, if I was recommending this book to somebody, it would need to change a lot because there is so much missing from this, and I'm not happy with it. So that's my thoughts and feelings on the books. Now I'm going to quickly run you through my stats. Now, in terms of my ratings, I read 3 5-star books, 2 4.5-star books, 4 4-star books, 2 2.5-star books, and then it says 1 3-star, which was Even If We Break, which I've actually now changed, so it's 1 1.5-star book. Then in terms of my format, I read The majority were print books, which is to be expected for me because I don't really read other books, like other formats as much. I always prefer print. But I read 7 print books of the 12 this month. I read 1 audiobook and 1 ebook exclusively, and then I had a combination of audiobook and print book at the same time. Like, for example, Even If We Break, Queen of Air and Darkness, they were how that went. Now, in terms of the genres I read a lot of fantasy this month. I only read 1 thriller. I'm a thriller booktuber, and I read 1 thriller. I read 1 comedy book. I read a suspense novel, a dystopian novel, 2 historical fictions, 2 crime novels, and 4 fantasies. That is based purely on the main genre I would give it. There are other subgenres, for example, Crescent City, there is a lot. It is a fantasy, it is a romance, it is a thriller. There is so much going on, but I would class this mainly as a fantasy, so I'm sticking it in the 1 genre. So I probably have read more when you combine them with their subgenres and things, but in terms of what there is, I've only read 1. Now, in terms of the publishers I've read, I wanted to do this just because I wanted to see whether I favoured any particular publishers over others. I read 1 from Source Books, which was Even If We Break. Scholastic, I read Life of Riley. Titan Books was Invisible Life of Addy LaRue. I read 1 book by Hodder and Stoughton, which was Kingdom of the Wicked. From HarperCollins, I read 2 books. Arrow Books, I read 2 books. Bloomsbury, I read 2 books. And Simon & Schuster, I read 2 books. So, no preferences as such. I expected to be reading Bloomsbury and HarperCollins more than others, so it's nice to see that that is not actually the case. So I wanted to also look at the publication year. Every book I've read has been in the 2000s. I haven't read any before that this month. I read 1 book, which was between 2000 and 2010, which was Ninth Judgment. 1 book between 2011 and 2015, which I think was 10th anniversary. And then 8 books between 2016 and 2020, and 2 books in 2021. Those 2 books were Unchosen and Find You First. The rest of them were all published between 2016 and 2020. Now, finally, looking at the intended audience of the book I read Life of Riley, which is 1 middle grade book. I then read 6 YA books and 5 adult books. So primarily I've read YA, but adult is in there as well, and I did read a middle grade. So it's been, again, fairly varied. I would like to read a bit more middle grade, but I'm really a big fan of YA and adult, so it's not surprising that they are the top 2. I expected to have read more adult because I do read a lot more thrillers, which are typically adult, but this month I know I've read a lot of fantasies and YAs to really suit the books that I read for Brooke, or because of my reads of the Shadowhunter Chronicles and things like that. So it is actually quite understandable, and I found it very interesting to look at that. But they are all of my stats and all of my books for the month of January. I'm very proud of how I did. Let me know down in the comments how you guys have done this month. How many books have you read, if you have read any at all. Either way, if you've picked up a book, that is excellent, and I'm really interested to know. So let me know down below. That is it from me. I will see you guys in the next video. So, until next time, bye.